Hey everyone, and welcome to the March subscription tasting video. I've tried to say that 3 times in a row. It's very difficult to say. I'm going to taste the 3 coffees we are sending out on the first Wednesday of March to all our subscribers around the world. Yes, we do ship around the world. We ship with DHL, and it takes like 1 day to get the coffees to Tokyo, so it's really, really efficient. We also, of course, ship in Norway because we're based in Norway. With the posten, pakke I postkassen, is very efficient. So I send out up to 6 bags every first Wednesday of the month. You can subscribe to 1 bag or 3 bags or 2 bags or 4 bags. You can upgrade, downgrade, stop or pause this subscription at any time. I choose the coffees every month, and that means sometimes we choose something that is only bought for our subscribers. So that means when I go to Honduras and I buy a certain lot, sometimes it's exclusive for our subscribers. This month, it's not a month like that, but we are sending out 3 very, very different and very nice coffees to our subscribers. And this is why I'm here now, to taste the coffees with you and talk a little bit about the coffees. So let's get started and tasting the first coffee that we're sending out. That means everyone who subscribes will get this coffee. I have made this as a cupping, and if you don't know what a cupping is, we have a tutorial on YouTube. It's pretty simple. This cup can contain up to 200 grams of water, so you can put like 11 or 12 grams of ground coffee in it, like medium fine grind. And just pour the water on and then wait a couple of minutes. You stir, you remove the foam that kind of creates on the top, and then you wait until the coffee is cooled down, and then you can start tasting. It's pretty simple and very, very fun to do with your friends or someone you love. And that way you can compare coffees at the same time and also discuss flavors in coffee. I really enjoy that, so highly recommend doing that. Otherwise, you can just sit down and enjoy the coffee while I talk, and maybe you can get some of the same flavor perceptions as I do. Okay, so let's start tasting the first coffee I'm sending out. This is a coffee from Ethiopia. Coffee people love coffees from Ethiopia and Kenya in general. Basically because they normally have very intense flavors of fruit or flowers or citrus and high acidity, but also a lot of sweetness. So think of it as like a really juicy juice. And that's what I think about when I drink African coffees. Let's taste this one. Wow. Okay, let me take that back. This reminds me of like really nice white tea. You know, the kind of green tea that they call white tea. Very delicate. It has a little bit of a stone fruit flavor in the background. And some floral flavors. Kind of like a mild jasmine flavor. So sometimes you get this very high quality jasmine green tea or something like that. You really taste a little bit like that. Super clean, super elegant, super floral. Very, very nice coffee, I think. It's a delicate Ethiopian coffee from the farm Echemo. I know we sent out some Echemo in previous months, but this is a different lot. This is a lot that it was fully washed, we call it, which means it was also wet fermented. Last or 2 seasons ago, which this was harvested in end of 2024. So this is kind of the current coffee we have from Ethiopia. It takes a while before it comes to Norway and everything. But this was one of the lots that Khalid, the farmer, did the traditional process with, which means after you pick the cherries, you do the sorting and everything, and then you depulp the cherries, you send it to the fermentation tank, and it's fermented underwater. So that means you fill the tank with the coffee that still has the mucilage on, and then you fill the tank containing the coffee, you fill it up with water, so it covers the coffee. And that means the fermentation is a lot slower, but also a lot cooler. And for me, at least, on this farm, it gives a little bit cleaner and more elegant coffee, more kind of citrus focus. Whereas we had a lot that we sold last year that was fermented without water. That means dry fermentation. And that had a little bit more like kind of almost rhubarb and a little bit more like ripe stone fruit flavor, because you get a little bit kind of fermentation flavor into the process. Here, I think this is just a super elegant and clean coffee, which is normally what I look for in Ethiopian coffees. I tend to like those super crisp, clean, floral, delicate, tea-like coffees. I think that's one of the unique things from Ethiopia. . I was in Ethiopia in November visiting Khalid together with Håkon, who's filming this video, and he was filming some documentaries for us there. What's really unique about this farm that Khalid has is it's a 30 plus hectare farm where all the trees that they grow are planted with seeds that his grandfather took from Choche forest, where they actually grew up, or his grandfather grew up. But when they migrated and got this land, they took seeds from Choche forest, from the best looking coffee trees that was in the forest. They planted it on this farm. And ever since, they have only taken seeds from these trees and planted in order to replant or to grow the farm a little bit. And that means it's not the typical kind of 74110, 74112, the cultivars that we sent out from Pacamara last month. It's we don't really know what it is. We can test it genetically, but probably would just say Ethiopian landrace, which means some kind of Ethiopian cultivar. There are so many cultivars of Arabica there that, you know, most of them don't have names or even numbers. So this is kind of the heritage of Khalid. Khalid is a third generation farmer. He runs a very, very nice operation. He has the farm where he kind of harvests and dries the coffee, but even though he has a small wet mill on the farm, he prefers now to use a bigger wet mill that he invested in, which is kind of 20-minute drive from the farm, where he actually buys cherries from other farmers and process and sell. So he exports quite a few containers of coffee, but we only buy coffee until now from his farm, Echemo, and those coffees are exclusively processed the way we want it. So this was wet fermented, it's dried under shade nets on drying tables. Every single daily picking is dried separately, stored separately in grain pro bags. We get samples. I think we got like 20 or 30 samples last year from him, where we cut through all the samples, we select the better lots, we may mix them together, and then we kind of create our unique coffee from Echemo. And I think, you know, in the last years where we have done this, the coffees have become much cleaner. They taste fresh for a much, much, much longer time. Like, I can't even taste any sign of age in this coffee, and it's over a year old. So that's kind of unique when you do very well processed coffee and you do storage in Grain Pro, you do vacuum packing, and here it's stored in very cold conditions during winter. The coffees taste really nice. Let's taste it again. Tend to see that when you cup, it's fun to taste the coffees when they're hot, but also when they cool down, you get more flavor, more expression, more sweetness, more balance. Very nice. I love drinking this coffee. Like, for me, this is like a perfect morning coffee because it's very delicate. In the morning, I have a nice big glass of water before I drink coffee every morning. And it kind of wakes your senses up in a very kind of soft way. It's like drinking a beautiful cup of tea. Cool. So first coffee, fermented coffee from Echemo, we call it heirloom cultivars, but we don't really know what it is, to be honest. To give you some contrast, I decided to try to, select coffees that are quite wide apart this month, that also taste really nice separately, but also gives you a nice kind of contrast when you cup coffees side by side. So the second coffee smells a lot more herbal, I would say. It smells a little bit like chocolate, dried fruit, like raisins, prunes. Yeah, for sure. This is a Pacamara cultivar. It's from Los Pirineos in El Salvador. It's a honey process. So the difference between the washed, where you depulp the coffee cherries, you ferment the mucilage, you wash off the mucilage, and you dried only the parchment coffee without any mucilage. The honey process at Los Pirineos is depulped, but you take the parchment coffee with mucilage still on, you take it straight to the drying tables, and you dry them with the mucilage on. And this sometimes can give you very clean coffees, but most times you get a little bit flavor from fermentation because the mucilage will ferment a little bit while the coffee is drying. But of course, when it's drying quite fast, so the fermentation is stopped before you get this kind of very banana or mango or strawberry-like flavors that you get in the natural processed coffees where you dry the whole cherry. So it's kind of a mix between washed and natural, somewhere in the middle. And it's not so popular maybe anymore. It used to be very popular 10 years ago. But Diego at Los Pirineos, he prefers to do a little bit of honey process still because they don't have water on the farm. And also because there's a good market for it. I enjoy the coffees if they are very clean. And this is a very clean one. Ho. Compared to the Echemo, it has a lot more like texture. The body is like fuller and richer. It reminds me of when you eat chocolate, you have this kind of nice lingering, sweet, kind of bittersweet finish. But it's like having a chocolate that is dark chocolate, maybe 60%, 50% cacao. And it is a little bit fermented. So you have this kind of slightly, I wouldn't say strawberry, but like strawberry-like kind of sweetness and fruit. And you have for sure this kind of raisin flavor in the finish, or prunes, or figs, you know, dried figs, stuff like that. And chocolate is always kind of the base flavor of these coffees, I think, from Los Pirineos. I've never had a coffee that didn't have kind of a chocolatey kind of overall flavor. And then you add the kind of fruit or florals on top of that. Very, very sweet coffee with a lot more texture than the Echemo, which is more like light, elegant, vibrant coffee. Let me go back and check. It's like two different drinks, to be honest. This is like drinking hot chocolate with milk, and this is like drinking tea, like texturally. Very, very different. So much fun to taste side by side. And it makes it a lot easier to describe the flavors when you have very different coffees side by side. Nice. So this was harvested last year. I'm actually on my way to Los Pirineos as we speak to buy new coffees and to visit Diego. If you haven't seen that beautiful farm, you can see that on the video we have published last year on YouTube. Beautiful, beautiful farm. It's on a volcano and surrounded by other volcanoes. You know, we're doing biological projects there where we're trying to grow coffees without pesticides, fungicides, fertilizers. And yeah, I'll try to give you an update on that when I'm there and maybe record a podcast with Diego. Cool. Third coffee we're sending out. I'm looking forward to tasting this. Wow, smells very floral. Has a little bit of banana aromas actually. Not in a fermenty way, but interesting. Not like the brown overripe banana, but more like the yellow to greenish banana, where it's a little bit more like herbal maybe? Herbal for sure. Floral and a little bit of these kind of citrusy aromas. Wow. I get orange and yellow flavors in my head. Like this reminds me of citrus. Citrus and florals. It is a geisha. And geisha, you normally have like mandarin, jasmine, honey, you know, citrus in general, stone fruit sometimes. This is very interesting. It has like a herbality that gives it almost a direction of banana, but then as you kind of drink it, you feel more like the orange flavor and a little bit florality. Very different from the Echemo. Let me go back to that. Yeah, Echemo is like, has a little bit more stone fruit now, but more like this kind of tea elegant stuff. This geisha, that is the third coffee. Also elegant, but a little bit more intensity of flavor, I would say. And definitely orange and florals. This is from Finca El Vikingo, a farm that is named after myself. Because Hobnil, who runs this farm, he thinks I'm a Viking. I think he saw the Netflix series The Vikings or something like that. And then I came to visit and he had just bought this land. I think it was in 2019 or something. And he wanted to give it a name, and we joked about me being a Viking. I want to name it Finca El Vikingo. So this is a farm that he purchased not so many years ago. You might know Hobnil's coffees from Nascimento and Cielito Lindo. We've been buying that since 2008, actually. This was the first farmer we started buying directly from. In 2018 or 19, he established Finca El Vikingo in a different area. So you have the Santa Barbara mountain, it kind of has different sides. And Cielito is in El Cielito, where Nascimento is. And then El Sauce is kind of more east, I think it is, east or north. But a little bit lower altitude, so I think around 1,600 meters above sea level, whereas Nascimento is from 15 to 1,800. He only planted geisha on this particular hill, and last year we started doing some trials here as well, where half the farm is now treated with biological farming techniques, and the other half is the conventional that is always done. This coffee is from the 2025 harvest, so this is only treated with conventional methods. So that means fertilizer, a little bit of fungicides and stuff. But we're trying to move away from that in order to see if we can increase the quality by increasing the quality of the soil on this farm. I was there with Håkon, who is filming now, actually in March last year, and was in the beginning of the harvest. We came to his house where he built a new wet mill where he processes the coffees from El Vikingo. Because he doesn't have water at El Vikingo, he takes the coffee from the farm and processes it at his house or near his house in Peña Blanca or near Peña Blanca. This has a much lower altitude. I think it's like 800 meters above sea level. So that means, you know, at night it's almost 30 degrees, very, very hot. And when we came there to film the process, the mill was just stinking of fermentation. It was not a very nice smell. And he had kept the geisha inside bags, you know, and he opened the bags and it was just horrific. So I asked him, like, why are you doing this? And he said, well, because a lot of the other farmers are doing it, and, you know, competition coffees are processed this way and a lot of people want it. I said, but I'm the only one who buys this coffee and I don't want it. And he's like, yeah, you're right about that. So we spent some time together to look at the process to see if we could improve it. Because the challenge when you ferment coffee in very hot climates is it goes maybe too fast, and you create some off flavors that I don't really like. It can be like some, you know, overripe fruit flavors, this kind of vinegary, almost rotten fruit flavors. So I asked him to start fermenting the coffees underwater, just like with this Echemo lot, in order to cool down the temperature during fermentation. Yes, the fermentation will take a little bit longer, but in this altitude, that's not a huge problem. So he started doing that, and when we got these lots and compared them to the other lots that he had processed without water, it was like night and day. This is much, much cleaner, much more pleasant to drink. Doesn't have this kind of, I almost have to say, stomach acid sometimes, because some of the lots he had processed was like not very nice. So this is a much, much cleaner version of this geisha, and I think maybe until now, the best lot we have had from El Vikingo, but I'm really hopeful that the coffee will get better, because I see that the farm is not as healthy as it can be. So the goal is to really elevate the quality of this coffee. Also, he has planted shade trees. We know that geisha likes shade and so on. So I have high hopes for this coffee, but it's going to take maybe 4, 5, 6 years before we get to the quality potential of this coffee, I think. It's not done overnight. You know, when you plant a shade tree, it takes 5 to 10 years for it to grow. And, you know, sometimes baristas don't think about that. They think like, oh, just plant shade trees and then you have shade. No, it takes time, you know, nature takes time. Really good, actually. I'm a little surprised how good this is now, because I cupped it when I bought it and it was a little green. And then because the coffee is very slowly dried, it's stored in Grain Pro, vacuum packed. Sometimes it takes some time for it to open up. It happens with Kenyan coffees, it happens with Ethiopian coffees. Definitely happened to this coffee. It's much, much better now than when I tasted it. I don't even remember when it was last time, a few months ago. Wow, okay. Huge difference between these coffees. And it's okay if you only subscribe to one bag. Just put any other coffee on the table. It can be a Brazilian coffee or whatever. You'll really find it's easier to describe the flavors of these coffees. Cool, so that's the first coffee, Echemo, wet fermentation from Khalid in near Agaro in Ethiopia, in the west part of Ethiopia. The middle one is from El Salvador, Los Pirineos Pacamara cultivar, honey processed, yeah, very different coffee. And the third one is from Honduras, from El Sauce in Santa Barbara in the north of Honduras, from Hobnil, that we have been buying for many years, and it's also wet fermentation. Really hope you enjoy these coffees, and yeah, if you want to subscribe to our coffee and don't do it yet, just go to our website and you can check it out there. Until next time, have a good March.